10 years ago, the idea of playing a game that would have a story that unravels over time as a saga felt really exciting to me. This was the promise and the mission statement of Bungie's Destiny when it was first announced. And since they were hot on the heels of Halo Reach, which in my opinion is one of the best Halo games out there, I was very excited to see what they were going to be doing next. Now it's a decade later, and there are plenty of other games that have tried to do what Destiny succeeded at and also failed at times. It would take way too long for me to talk about all the live service games, whether they succeeded or failed. Instead, I want to talk about 3 games that come to mind for me in recent history that are both good and bad examples of how to do live service right. I want to talk about Destiny 2's approach to live service, Suicide Squad's approach to live service, and Helldivers 2's approach to live service as well. As I stated earlier, Destiny and now Destiny 2 are built around this 10-year plan that Bungie started about 10 years ago. But even back then, the scope of the game was very clear and it felt like it was going to be very big. The next expansion, called The Final Shape, is the final chapter in that saga. And during this literal decade, Bungie's been adding new stories, new campaigns to play through, new game types, new weapons, new things to do with your friends. The game's been able to gather a huge community of dedicated players, myself included, and while it has a lot to do with all the content they've added, I think a huge part of that is how good it feels to play Destiny. And they keep me coming back, not for the rewards or the new things I can buy, but for the experiences that I know I'm going to have when I play the game. Since there's so much to do, I can decide what I'm in the mood for, and they've done a really good job of making it an appealing idea to just spend my evening playing Destiny, since I know I'm going to have fun because there's so much to choose from. And that's going to be a running theme throughout this entire video, is that live service games have to be fun to play. They have to be really good to play, but they also have to be very rewarding to play. Now that doesn't always mean loot in the game, that just means rewarding, whatever makes you feel rewarded when you play a game. Which unfortunately brings me to the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League and its approach to live service. Now, I gave this game a fairly generous review. I mean, there's a lot wrong with the game, I'm not going to deny that, but I enjoyed my time with it. And you'll see I put a past tense there, enjoyed my time with it. Now, that's not the goal of a live service game. The idea is to keep me coming back, right? And after about 50 hours, I've gotten through the story, I've gotten all my characters to max level, and I've gotten most of the end game gear, but I have hit a wall with Suicide Squad. The only goal that I have left in the game for myself is to get the Platinum Trophy, which involves so much grinding and playing things over and over again. But playing the game over and over shouldn't be a problem, since I'm enjoying the combat and I think the game plays pretty alright, right? And while that's true, the game's end game, which again happens way after the campaign's over, is essentially the same at different difficulty levels. It only takes a handful of missions and it makes you do them over and over again at different difficulties, which eventually just starts to feel really stale. And on top of that, in its current state, there's no matchmaking, so I can't form up with other Suicide Squad players to play through the harder content. So on one hand, I've hit an interest wall, which is I have to earn everything through randomness. All of the loot at the end game is randomly dropped after you finish a mission. And if I'm doing the same missions over and over again and I'm getting things that I already have, then I'm just gonna get bored. And on top of that, I can't do higher difficulty missions because I can't even play with other players, so the challenge is now gone. The game just falls flat on its face at this point, and I've played pretty far. I'm like halfway through what they would consider the season pass, and I don't know if I'm gonna make it all the way through. And this isn't good because the game's got more content coming down the pipe, new characters, new story arcs, and that might be interesting enough to bring me back in, but if they don't figure out a more fun loop to play during the end game, then I can't see myself wanting to come back. Now granted, I'm not sure what their plan is for Suicide Squad, whether it's 5 years or 2 years or 18 years, I don't know, but this is the part of the game that has to feel enjoyable to pick back up. Because like I said earlier, Destiny, I don't mind popping in between new content because it's just fun to play. And while I don't think it's super fair to compare every live service game to Destiny, I think it's valid because it's a really successful example of what a live service game can be. However, I don't think that Destiny would be as successful as it was and has been if it released today. That iteration of the live service game is starting to get stale and players are getting bored, and the Suicide Squad is a really good example of that. Of course, the Suicide Squad is way more than just its live service components. I think that the game has a really good foundation, so if they do come up with more enjoyable activities, then they might have something there, but until they do that, you only have half the picture. With Suicide Squad out of the way, I want to talk a little bit more about Helldivers 2. Now, unfortunately, I've only gotten a bunch of time in with the game because the servers have just been getting hammered. and that's because everybody loves this game. However, the game's got almost no story to tell, it's got no loot to get. Why would you even play a game without loot? In place of loot, you've got earnable rewards that you can choose from after earning currency through your missions. But the rewards aren't even why Helldivers 2 is so enjoyable and why the game is constantly at server capacity. Helldivers 2 is not only extremely fun to play, but it has a very interesting mission structure that brings in the entire community. In place of a story with cinematics and a script, Helldivers 2 has something a little more loose and open-ended, but a lot more community-oriented. As of this recording, the robots in the game, they're basically Terminators, are assaulting Super Earth and they're trying to make an advance against our planet. And when you go to choose a mission, you can see a meter that says how far along they are compared to how much we are holding them back. So there's a live feed of how successful all of the Helldivers that are playing this game are being at that current moment. So you know that you're a part of this much bigger experience and you feel sort of compelled to play your part and get the bugs and the aliens and all of them out of the way. And on top of this wide community experience, Helldivers 2 is so much fun to play. The game is very chaotic. You don't need to grind levels to be strong. All you have to do is unlock more gear, but even without a bunch of gear unlocked, is a good chance that one of your teammates is gonna have stuff that helps you through. So there's no need to grind your way to the fun content so that you're raid ready or whatever it is. You're enjoying a version of the fun content at all times. And of course the game's gonna get more fun as you unlock more things, you get bigger and better gear, but at the core, it's still enjoyable. So Helldivers 2 gives you a fun game to play, and it gives you a game with a really strong community that is constantly part of your experience. And even though some of the missions feel very similar between them, the experiences you have playing them are almost always super different. A lot of random things can happen during missions, there's lots of side missions you can do, and the best and possibly worst part of this experience is that you can kill other teammates by accident. Sure, this sounds like a recipe for disaster in an online game, but what it winds up being is a silly mess. It's almost like a reminder that, hey, this game is very silly and meant to be fun, so let's just enjoy it, and if you get blown up by my grenade, my bad. The team killing in this game is so rampant that I actually got taken out by me. I was firing at some armor and then a bullet pinged me back and hit me right in the face, and then that was it. I had to get revived. So as it stands right now, Helldivers 2 is probably the most successful new live service game that has released in a long time. Helldivers 2 has actually been so successful that it far exceeded the developers' expectations for it. When the original Helldivers came out, I think the most people that were playing at one time was about 10,000 players. And at this moment of this recording, the game is currently capped at 450,000 players, and nobody else can get in after that number. Now, if the servers could just stop being on fire all the time, maybe we can actually enjoy that really good game. So with all the live service games that have been released and have yet to be released, I think it's really interesting to see which ones stick and which ones don't. It's always going to come down to how fun the game is to play and what are you doing to bring me back in? How are you holding on to my interest? Why should I keep playing your game? Because when a live service game sticks, it can be around for a very long time, and when it doesn't, it will be gone before you know it. World of Warcraft is probably the best early example of a live service game really kicking off, and it's still going. But for every successful live service game, there's probably 24 unsuccessful ones. So with all that being said, what's a live service game that has held your attention for longer than most? Are you sick of all the live service games that are coming out? Are you annoyed to think that there are more yet to come? Either way, let me know in the comments. I'm really excited to talk about live service games. I think it's kind of fascinating when one does stick and to see why. I think that there's always some room for a live service game in somebody's rotation because then you can have something to play in between bigger experiences. But it can be a little exhausting to play a game for 10 literal years straight. Anyway, if you liked my video, make sure you like the video. And if you really liked my video and you want to get more of this, then make sure you subscribed. But ultimately, thank you very much for watching my video, and I will see you in the next one.